they put all this family on this car, and they take her to the what we believe security, national security forces buildings.
Solidarity with Ukraine. Enough violence, enough pain. Solidarity with Ukraine. Enough violence, enough pain.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. We start with another housing demolition by Israeli forces on the West Bank. In case you don't know it, it's almost impossible for a Palestinian there to get a housing permit. Note also on this video the insignia of Hyundai Heavy Industries, a company justifiably on the BDS boycott list. The Israeli Knesset has renewed one of its apartheid laws. It banned the Interior Minister of Israel from allowing Palestinians from the territories to live inside of Israel with their married spouse. So if a woman from Jaffa meets a Palestinian man from Ramallah in the USA and marries him, he is not allowed to come to Israel and live there. Pure racism. And the U.S. House of Representatives voted Israel $3.3 billion for defense, and also another $500 million for missile defense, and on top of that, another $1 billion for missile defense. No doubt in tribute to the humane way they blew apart families in the Gaza Strip last May. March, like every other month, has its share of memorials. On March 16, 2003, Israeli troops killed Rachel Corrie. On March 19th, in 2014, Palestinian Yusuf Shawamra was shot to death by Israeli soldiers while he was picking wild herbs on his own family's property. March 9th, a year before that, Assad security forces kidnapped and disappeared the entire family of Hassan Alabbasi. I'll be speaking to Hassan Alabbasi. We'll be talking about the kidnapping and the disappearance of his sister's entire family in Syria at the hands of Assad forces. Alabbasi is an electrical engineer. He is speaking to us from Ottawa, Canada. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
What is your sister's name and the name of her husband?
My sister's name, Rania Alabbasi, and her husband name, Abdurrahman Al Yasid.
Okay, and where did they live in Syria?
They lived on a very famous neighborhood on Syria. It named Dummar Project. This is very there is on that area is very high security because there are a lot of general living there, so it's very secure square where she's living there.
Is that Damascus?
Yeah, it's actually not on the town, on the middle of Damascus, but it's this city. It's related to Damascus. Yeah, it's only 2 kilometers. Yeah.
Now, did you live there too, or a different part of Syria?
Yeah, actually, we are living when we are as a family. We are living on Damascus capital, but after that we are travel and we are work. After that, my sister return and buy a house on this area and begin his profession on the clinic as a dentist. And from 2008, they established his clinic and began work at that time.
Okay.
We are still, we all brother and sister of Rania, they are outside traveling for the work before the revolution, before this accident.
Now, before the revolution, before 2011, was your sister or her husband involved in political activities?
No, Abdurrahman, he's a contractor. He worked as a contractor in Saudi Arabia. When my sister decided to return to Syria to begin work on her own clinic, he decided to stay on Saudi Arabia and began travel between Damascus and Riyadh and continue his work on Saudi Arabia. During the revolution, Abdurrahman Yassin, as he volunteered to do some humanitarian activity, yeah, to support and aid the refugees that they came from outside Damascus.
So her husband helped out with the refugees.
Yeah. He support them sometime by dates because he work with some people. They have factory for dates, and they sometimes give some money to some poor people to do some main purpose for life. So he not as he's volunteer. Mm-hmm. There is no any other thing. He volunteered from himself. This is, I must do this to my brothers on Syria.
And what about your sister? Was she
my sister? Too? My sister, she's a loving mother for 6 kids. Yeah. She's very busy. You can imagine, say they have a clinic at work and schedule at the clinic. They have to follow up with 6 kids on school. They need to cook, prepare the food. They need to follow up. They need to take child to school or to return from school. She's a very busy woman and they don't have any activity.
Okay, so then this is March 7th, 2022. What happened on March 9th, 2013?
Yeah, at 9th of March 2013, the National Security Forces raided my sister's house. They brought with them some young man, his age around 15. The evidence of torture appeared on his face, and he said, and he put his finger to Abdurrahman after they knocked the door. Abdurrahman, he opened, he said to the police and the national force, his guy give me a money. This is the direct story. This is the starting of the story. At that time, they arrest the national security forces, arrest only Abdurrahman and give my sister the order to stay forcefully without moving outside the house with her kids. And at that time, only Abdurrahman arrested. Yeah, this is the first day that Abdurrahman arrested. Yeah.
And then what happened the next day?
Yeah, the day after, they raided the house again, and they brought Abdurrahman, and Abdurrahman is very scared, and he drank some water and said to my sister, please do what they ask you. Don't say no. Actually, they take all the assets My sister, they have 3 cars. They take it. They take money. They take gold, jewelry. Actually, at that time, they take all things. And
What was the last thing you said?
digital devices, computer, laptop. They take all things. I think they need to open these devices to see the activity, to follow up. They are, because as you know, if you write something on the computer against the government, this is a big issue in our regime. So they take all these assets and they give order to my sister to stay forcefully at the house. They cut all communication, the telephone and the internet connection. And my sister, she was arrested on her own house at that time with six kids under severe fear.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know what will happen.
I think you wrote that they took even their legal documents for the ownership of the house.
Actually, they take all she prepare passport. They have a passport. They take it, and they take maybe the ownership, the paper for owning some asset. Yeah, they take all this. They put it on some place. They take it with the jewelry, with some cash available. They take it. Yeah.
Even jewelry and cash.
Yeah, but actually, we don't think that this is happen from some behavior from this group. No, this is from the order, from the general on the national security forces. This is small. The people that they came to us and make raiding and arrest Abdurrahman, they don't do anything without direct instruction from the director.
So on the 9th, they arrested the husband. The 10th, they take all the property or a lot of it.
Yeah.
And then what happened the next day?
Yeah, at 11 of March 2013, Majdouline, her secretary, my sister on the clinic, hire Majdouline to make a schedule for all customers. And Majdouline at that time, they visit my sister to console and to comfort her after they know that her husband arrested. And during that day, the National Security Forces raided the house once more, and they give order to my sister and her family, 6 children, and her secretary to surrender to the force and to come with them. And actually, they take and put them on my sister car. This is minivan. They put all this family on this car, and they take her to the what we believe National Security Forces buildings.
In the middle of March in 2013, you had heard about what had happened. Was there anything you could do? Can you go to authorities, or what do you do?
Yeah, actually, what we are doing, what we are began thinking at that time, the first step is from some relative of Abdurrahman and Rania. Some relative try to ask, go to some building and try to ask, and unfortunately, they arrest this relative that they asking about the sister, this family. And we are on one problem. We are now facing other problem about that family. So a lot of work and effort until we release this relative from arrest. Yeah. And after that, we understand that this is prohibited to anyone to ask about this family. And usually in Syria, if there is any political prisoner, Nobody can ask about him, and this is from illegally. And if you do something like this, you are under threat because you are cross the red line. This is you can't ask about this family anymore.
You can't ask about the family anymore. He goes on to say that his family has not heard a word from any member of his sister's family, or indeed any news at all, for the last 9 years. Amnesty International has a campaign out for this family. We need to get publicity out about this case. And we could start with Democracy Now!, writing to the producers at democracynow.org. My whole interview is 36 minutes long. It's one of the longest interviews I've ever done. You can hear it all now by going to our YouTube channel, Struggle Video Media. We'll link to it from The Struggle. More about the case at peace.org. Speaking of Syria, you should know that the Russian bombs have never stopped against Syrians. This infant lost his leg on February 7th. So sad he never even used it once. While Biden has flooded Ukraine with aid, for good reason, not much is being done for the Syrians living under those very same Russian bombs. And you have to shake your head about all the sanctions coming down against Russia. When we asked for just a few of those things years ago, at the height of the Russian bombardment of Syria, the politicians just shook their head at us and said it can't be done. We move on to Ukraine, first with some advice and support from the White Helmets, the Syrian civil defense, who unfortunately have a lot of experience digging people out of collapsed buildings.
بالوقت اللي لازم نفكر فيه كيف نعمر ونبني ونعيش بسلام، في مين عم يفكر كيف يدمر ويشن حروب. نحن كمستجيبين ومنقذين نعرف قساوة الحرب والآلام اللي بتتركها. منأكد تضامننا مع العمال الإنسانيين الأوكرانيين والشعب الأوكراني اللي عم يعيش الحرب هاي الأيام، ومنتمنى تنتهي الحرب بأسرع وقت ويعم السلام.
آلاف الضحايا اللي أنقذناهم خلال عملنا بسوريا قصصهم حاضرة بذاكرنا، ما ممكن ننساهم، ننسى الألم يلي عاشوه الشعب الأوكراني. عم يعيش مأساة شبيهة باللي عاشه الشعب السوري. هي الحرب الظالمة لازم تنتهي، وكل مجرم قتل ودمر وشرد المدنيين بأي مكان في العالم لازم يتحاسب.
Putin seems to be repeating his Syrian war crimes, bombing a square in Chernihiv and killing 38 men and 9 women. Now, a brave protest by Ukrainians in the city of Nova Kharkova after it was occupied by Russian troops. Even braver, this team of men dismantling a live bomb with only hands and water. On a very rainy March 6th, a portion of Connecticut's left turned out for a protest rally, solidarity with the Ukrainian victims of the invasion. It was in front of the federal courthouse in New Haven.
Solidarity with Ukraine. Enough violence, enough pain. Solidarity with Ukraine. Enough violence, enough pain. Solidarity with Ukraine. Enough violence, enough pain.
No war, no warming. Another world is possible.
No war, no warming. Another world is possible.
Morning, everybody. I'm so happy to be with you all today. I'm so happy to be in solidarity with the people of Ukraine and the people of Russia in this time when our government and the government of Russia are conspiring with governments around Europe to bring about the greatest bloodbath that possibly we've seen on that continent for decades, and possibly extended around the world depending on how far they get away with what they want to do. I'm happy to be with you here at a time when people in Russia are demonstrating in unprecedented numbers. I know there's a lot of students of movements against war here, and I'd like to ask you afterwards if you could tell me of a time when people have demonstrated against a war, not before it began, not after there were major casualties, but right after it began, because I cannot think of an example like this in the history of the world. Both the American government and the Russian government are fighting no holds barred to get control over resources and territory, to get just a little bit of an edge in the fight for economic dominance, for resource dominance, to get the very natural resources out of the ground that threaten to destroy human civilization on planet Earth. But again, I want to say that I come here with hope. I'll tell you, the last time I can think of when Russians mobilized in the streets like this against war, they overthrew an entire social order. And if you think that memory is not alive in Russia today, I suggest you read Putin's speech on February 21st, where he says that the existence of the Ukraine owes itself to that very struggle. And that is what he wants to bury.
Let's be straight. The main thing going on in Eastern Europe is that an imperial country is invading a small country so it can conquer it. We have to show absolute solidarity with the Ukrainian people who are being ravaged by a thuggish regime who is angered that a rival is getting closer to his border, but whose main concern is restoring an empire to its supposed glory under the czars. We have to show solidarity and express awe at the resistance being shown by Ukrainians, but we cannot let our sympathy mean support for the U.S. empire and its recklessness that could escalate to nuclear war.
No war in Ukraine!
Please welcome Melinda Tuhus, who's a longtime environmental activist and a member of 350 Connecticut.
Just as Putin invaded Ukraine, I happen to be reading the chapter about Ukraine in Simon Winchester's book, Land, How the Hunger for Ownership Shapes the Modern World. The chapter describes how as many as 10 million people died of starvation when it was part of the Soviet Union under Stalin's forced collectivization scheme. That's quite a legacy, and Russia's current ruler seems to want to relive the past. First, we in 350 Connecticut honor all the Russians who have taken to the streets to condemn their own country's actions in Ukraine. 8,000 have already been arrested. We have been working for the past 10 years toward the goal of eliminating coal, oil, and gas production in the U.S. in order to stabilize our climate. The U.S. military budget of almost $800 billion should be converted to meet human needs. Like building electric heat pumps for Europe and for us here at home. We must do everything in our power to make sure the outcome of this horrible war is not a supercharged fossil fuel future, but instead a renewable energy future that we urgently need to solve the climate crisis and end the pernicious influence of the petro-states, including our own. We say, no war, no warming. No war, no warming.
The next speaker talked about sanctions, the underside of sanctions, because sanctions very often harm the tyrant's subject or kill them, and leave the tyrant untouched or even strengthened.
My name is Nika Zarazvan. I'm an Iranian immigrant and organizer, and I'm grateful to have lived in New Haven for almost 6 years now. After all the performance and applause of a humane diplomatic approach, people will pay the cost. My own family members were not able to get vaccines, PPE, and medicine during the COVID-19 pandemic.
She gave many more examples. See her whole talk and all the talks that day in our YouTube section on the struggle. The next 90 seconds are mostly still photos of the rally that took place right after ours, mostly Ukrainian Americans on the New Haven Green. That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller for The Struggle.